The second Sunday in May is always a big deal. You all are here today to worship the Lord. And my guess is, if your mother's still in this world, probably more than anything, the greatest blessing could give her would be to come to church with her. And that's pretty normal. Mother's Day is a big deal in a lot of ways. I was reading this statistic that it's a crime statistic that Mother's Day is actually one of the lowest days of crime in the entire calendar year. Which makes me think, what are our mothers up to when we're not taking them to brunch and to dinner? But, it does kind of make you think that this does impact us. It changes our rhythm a little bit. And so today is Sunday. We're here to honor the Lord. And as we also acknowledge our mothers, we need to understand that that's okay to do. To honor them as God has called us to do, whether that's giving her a card or calling her later this afternoon, or maybe you made her breakfast in bed this morning. Perhaps you bought her flowers, or you're here at church with her. Those are all ways in which you honor your mother, and rightly so, because moms matter to God and to us. We are here because of our mothers. And at the same time, we can also acknowledge that today can be kind of tough. That Mother's Day for a preacher is basically a field of landmines. I was talking with one day this morning, and I said, "Happy Mother's Day." He said, "You preaching on Mother's Day?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, you ought to." But I know other people who've said, the last thing I want to hear about on Mother's Day is a sermon on mothers. Because I can't have children, because I've lost my own mother, because I have an estranged relationship with my mother. There's a lot of reasons that Mother's Day can be tough, and we should acknowledge that. We need to understand that we kind of live in that tension as a church family of both the good that our mothers are and the blessings, but also the difficulties and the challenges. And I think we can I think even in difficulty, we can still honor our mothers. At the most basic level, no matter what your situation looks like with your own mother or your own children, we are here today because our mothers chose to give us life. And that's a beautiful thing. She did so at great cost to herself. A great transformation happened within her body and within her mind. So we honor mothers today. We also acknowledge at the same time that it can be challenging. We're going to talk about that this morning. First, and the reason really why we're talking about it is because moms matter. Moms matter first and foremost to God. It was His design in the beginning to create human beings in such a way that it took two people, male and female, to create a family, to create children. And Eve was a unique creation. If you go to Genesis chapter 2, they're right there in the beginning chapters. We know from the outset that Eve was a special creation. Chapter 2, verse 20, the scripture says, "The man gave names to all livestock, to all the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam, there was no helper fit for him." And so, a little bit of a deep dive. The word helper there is a Hebrew word, ezer. It looks like E-Z-E-R in the English, but that's not the Hebrew. But ezer describes, that's the word that we have translated suitable helper. Now, we just kind of think, well, okay, helper, that's, she helps me, she's by my side, she helps me do a lot of things, and that's okay, but that really kind of misses what Genesis 2 is talking about when God made Eve for Adam. The same word is used in Psalm 121, and it reads this way: I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help, Ezer, come from? My help, my Ezer, comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Now, just as God is no ordinary helper, Eve was no ordinary helper to Adam. She was much more than a partner or a co-parent or a roommate. She was so much more than that. Like God helps us, Eve helps Adam in ways that he could not help himself. Almost 25 years ago, it's probably been 25 years ago, almost to the day, I moved from Oklahoma Christian to Phoenix, Arizona. At that point, I was a bachelor. Christy and I were engaged, but we were not yet married. And a great elder at the church had helped me find a one-bedroom apartment there in Peoria. It's a brand new apartment. I was the first to live in it. And he came by to visit one day, and he walked in. I can just picture it now. He opened the door, and I said hi, but he was just kind of looking around. And what did he see? A lot of nothing. Bare walls, hardly any furniture. And when I say hardly any furniture, I mean my furniture was a mattress on the floor, a television, and most important, a dartboard. That's the bachelor life. And as that elder looked around the apartment, he looked at me and he said, "Toby, when are you and Christy getting married?" He knew that Toby, both then and now, needed an Ezer. Someone who would help him in ways he was unable to help himself. When Adam and Eve, God created the family, and he created these two special roles of father and mother. And these are so special of a role that God specifically calls us to honor these positions. His word commands us to do this. No other position in your family is so honored. Think about it for just a minute. You have grandparents and siblings and children and cousins, but it is only your mother and your father that God calls you to give honor. In fact, this is seen in Ephesians chapter 6. If you're opening your Bibles, I hope that you do, or scroll down to Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. And Paul here is speaking, he's in the practical part of Ephesians. The first 3 chapters are theological, and he builds up this beautiful foundation. And then in chapters 4, 5, and 6, he gets real practical. In other words, what does it mean to live like a Christian? And so he speaks to the roles we have in our lives, specifically in verses 1 through 3. He says this: "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise." Now, Paul's hearkening back to something here. The promise is in verse 3, that it may go well with you, that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Now, young children, we understand this. Young children are to obey their children, honor their parents by obeying them, both in heart and in action. A child can technically obey you in action, but not be obedient in their heart. And so, teenagers, when your parents ask you to do something, the best way to honor them is by obedience, both in heart and in action. But when you grow up, there's a time where you leave the protective care of your parents, and you don't have to technically obey your parents. You can have, stay out beyond when curfew is, and you can invite over who you want. You can go where you want. We hope you do that in a God-fearing way. But here, the essence of the command doesn't stop. We're still called to honor the position of mother and father. You see, all of us here only get one mother and one father, and those positions are held in high regard by God. And as you honor them, you receive the blessing of God. In fact, Romans chapter 1 says one of the signals of a society that's collapsing and disintegrating is they disobey their parents. They no longer honor father and mother. Now, I want you to think about it. Not only matters to God, it matters so much to God in the flesh, Jesus, when he was here on the earth. Of course, we know how Jesus entered the world through Mary's womb in that unique and special way, but fast forward 33 years to the end of Jesus' life on earth. As you fix your eyes on Jesus, think about the last moments as he fulfilled his eternal purpose there on the hill at Golgotha. One of Jesus' final acts, and it's so easily looked over, but one of Jesus' final acts on earth was to honor his mother. Woman, here is your son, as he points to the Apostle John. Well, what's Jesus doing there? In a world, in a time where a widowed woman, which is probably what Mary was, with her eldest son long gone, there was no one to take care of her. She could be in a whole lot of trouble, physically, financially. She'd be a target for predatory kinds of people. And so the law made a provision to honor your mother and to have someone step into that role. And Jesus specifically called John to do that. Now, this is a beautiful picture of Jesus honoring his mother, because motherhood is an honorable role. So honorable that even the Son of God honored his mother as one of the last things he did as he breathed out his last few breaths. His last few words were given in honor of his mother. That shows us how important it is in God's eyes to honor mothers. Second consideration is that moms matter in the redemption story. Now, biblically speaking, we know that moms matter. But it's not just in the creation story, and it's not just for procreation, but mothers matter in the redemption story. The account of God working through the affairs of men and women all through time, from the beginning of Genesis all the way until the last glorious reunification of God and his people. Mothers are put at very specific and pointed points. The Bible is full of women whose wombs God used in the redemption story. We think about this. Eve reminds us that mothers are vessels for bringing life into the world. If you read Psalm 139, and I'm not going to read from it this morning, but I'll encourage you to read it. But David is so clear about how beautiful and powerful and amazing the work that God does in the womb. This is something that I can't obviously speak from experience, but every woman who's had a child understands the transformative process that happens in her physically, emotionally, and I'll even say spiritually. Your womb will expand from the size of your fist to, when it's all said and done, about the size of a watermelon. And you can say, yikes. All of your organs surrounding that are moved in such a God-ordained way so that her life can still function but make room for the child. Her intestinal, the digestive tract changes to absorb nutrients differently to feed both mother and the developing child. I just made a visit to Brendan and Kara, their new little Jamie, and we were talking about that, and Kara mentioned the fact that she is allergic to gluten. But during pregnancy, she wasn't. Well, that's because of what's happening in the way her body transformed to be a vessel for creation. Isn't that amazing? It is to me anyway. The brain is rewired Every mother instinct has a second set of eyes in her head. That's something that happened to you in the pregnancy process, hormonally and brain, all of the brain chemistry stuff happening here is literally rewiring your mind and your heart to be a mother. And of course, we know that your bladder shrinks just a tiny bit in that process. But all of that reminds us that God uses women in such a amazingly powerful way. I found this, I don't know the author, but I thought it was fitting. On the 8th day, God looked down on his good creation. He needed someone who could love his children well. So God made a mother. God said, life will be harsh. I need someone with a gentle touch, someone who can brush a tear from the downy cheek of a newborn, someone who can gauge a child's temperature with just the back of her hand. I need someone who has a special knack for soothing, who can kiss away pain and soften the blows, someone who will hold her child's hand firmly until she has to release it tearfully on the first day of school. So God made a mother. I need someone who will take the dandelions offered to her by an enthusiastic 4-year-old, fawn all over them, put them in a vase so that everyone in the house can enjoy the offerings of spring. Someone who will care enough to rummage through mismatched sock piles in hopes of finding a match. Someone who will make birthdays extra special and sing silly songs with toddlers in the car. Someone who actually wants to go on the school field trip to the insect museum just to be close to her child. God thought, I'll need someone who can decorate gingerbread houses with the kids and wrap gifts at midnight and deck the halls for Christmas and spend all day preparing and serving a holiday meal to a house full of her most beloved treasures. So God made a mother. I'll need someone who can gather a chaotic, busy family around the dinner table for chicken soup and cornbread and sharing life together. Someone who will organize play dates, haul kids to piano lessons, and organize the pantry. I need someone who can find the lost football cleat, find Dad's keys, and find her little girl's favorite stuffed bunny. So God made a mother. I need someone who can unload the dishwasher and pack lunches and call out the spelling words and make coffee while bouncing a baby on her hip. I need someone who will carry an amazing array of toys, crayons, goldfish, Cheerios, and other essentials, all in her purse. I need someone who will help with endless school projects and get the kids to ball practice and play rehearsals. And say, I'm so proud of you. It must be someone who will keep going even when she thinks she has no strength left. Someone who will love her kids and love their father more and more each day. I need someone who's willing to work second shift or take second best or play second fiddle so her family will have it better than she did. So God made a mother. I need someone who believes, someone who will trust my plan for her and for her children even when she can't see it herself. Someone who will pray for her family daily, for sadly, few people will. I'll need someone who will share my words and encourage her children to believe in me, to have faith in me, and to trust in me as the source of eternal life. So God made a mother. I'll need a second pair of eyes in the back of a mother's head. I'll give her bionic hearing. I will grant her a generous portion of laughter and tears, for she will need them. And sometimes when she doesn't feel like she has what it takes, there will be days when she is overcome with worry and angst and pain or fear of failure. But when the need arises, she'll be there. And while motherhood will be difficult, she'll come to embrace all of it with all of her heart. I need someone who will love my children, well, kind of like I do. So God made a mother. And once I put a precious baby in her arms, she will never be the same. One day her children will grow up and move out and move on, but she never will. For as long as she lives, she will continue to love her children and pray for them and support them and visit them and sacrifice for them. And at the end of her life, though her eyes are weak, her skin is wrinkled, and her hair is as white as cotton, her heart and her soul will be entirely full. So God made a mother. It is the work of God that is motherhood. Eve taught us this, and Hannah taught us the importance of this, and Mary modeled the importance of faith and trust in God Himself. In fact, God even compares Himself to a mother. I find this fascinating. The Creator of heaven and earth, when He wanted to show us exactly how much He loves us, Isaiah chapter 66 is a verse you'll want to turn to and mark and be reminded that God revealed through the prophet Isaiah that when you want to think of how much God loves and comforts you, know that He compared it to just how your own mother loves and comforts you. Isaiah 66:13 is the verse. In part, it reads, "As a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you." When God wanted to reveal and describe that beautiful, perfect love which He has for His people, He pointed to a kind of love to which every single person alive can relate to. And finally, we remember that mothers matter not just to God, but moms also matter not just in the redemption story, but also in the kingdom. Moms are a kingdom kind of people. The physical family, well, we said that began in the mind of God. But with mothers, that without mothers, no family can happen. But so too did the spiritual family need mothers. Ephesians chapter 2 tells us that the kingdom, the church, is the household of God, the spiritual family. And within that family, we need all kinds of spiritual mothers. Now, maybe it was your own mother, or maybe it was a lady who taught class, or maybe it was a lady who taught your kids' class. But I can tell you from personal experience that I have been mothered personally and spiritually by so many women within the kingdom. These are mature Christian women who love, nurture, train, correct, and help the church to raise its disciples. Now, you can't do a Mother's Day sermon without referencing 2 Timothy. Timothy was a young minister, and Paul calls out these two women in Timothy's life, his mother and his grandmother, Lois and Eunice. Their mention in Scripture remind us of the eternal impact that our mothers make in teaching their children about God. They remind us that kingdom influence is not always about something you do, but can also be about someone you raise. And so in the kingdom, we honor, we support, we equip the family. And this matters probably now more than ever. You say, what's the problem? There's not really any problem. Preaching on motherhood is kind of like preaching on apple pie. Everybody kind of likes that, generally speaking. I'm going to get some critiques. I don't like apple pie at all. Okay, fine. But it's easy to love our mothers. Is it really a challenging thing to preach a sermon on motherhood? Well, it's important now more than ever because the world makes a mockery of motherhood. And let me tell you what I mean by that. You see, mother used to be an honor exclusively reserved for women. And as we see all throughout our culture, we see women being dominated by men. Whether it's your daughter going into a locker room or your high school teenager who now has to compete against a male, or even watching men invade the position of motherhood. And so you'll increasingly hear terms like birthing person or chest feeding. And all of those things are a mockery of motherhood. It diminishes it. Now, we can see things like that, and we need to understand that this is really just part of the long-standing spiritual war on women. Think about it. Back to the garden in Genesis chapter 3, where did Satan begin his attack? Satan's a coward. So he's going to go after fragile Eve. And that hasn't stopped. And so we see things like this today in our culture, and you just need to know that's part of a larger spiritual warfare against women and against mothers. Motherhood is a tough enough job without all this foolishness, and it's not really the point of this sermon. This is not a cursing the darkness kind of sermon. The darkness is out there. We just need to deal with the reality of it. The point is that honoring mothers matters now more than ever. Kingdom people honor mothers because moms matter to God and to us. So let's get practical with this. How can we do this? How can we make Mother's Day every day? As good as one day a year is, your mother is worth more than being honored just once a year. So I'll give you some suggestions, and hopefully these will help make it a little more practical. First, husbands need to love your wife well. Back to Ephesians chapter 5, Paul says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. The greatest blessing you can give to your children or to your family is a healthy marriage. I didn't say a perfect marriage, okay? There's no such thing, but a healthy marriage. And when we do it as God designed it, it's husbands and wives and the children watching a husband love in a sacrificial kind of way. I remember many years ago, 10 or 11 years ago, we were just sitting around and I was kind of joking around with Christy and being just a bit superfluous. And Grace, in a very sincere way, in a very adamant way, at age 3, looked up at me and said, Dad, she needs love. And we're not just talking romantic love. That's a good thing, but that's not all of it. We're talking about sacrificial love. And so you can love her by praying with her, by going on dates with her, by showing affection to the point where your kids get grossed out. You can love her in big ways and small. You can open car doors and do dishes. You can protect her. When you go for a walk, you stand between her and the danger, wherever that is. You should love your wife well, and that's an honorable thing to do. And when your children see that, they're given such stability. They're given such grace as they watch. I mean, marriage is a model of the gospel story, as this is what Paul says. Look, he says, love your wife as Christ loved the church. So you want to preach the gospel to your children, live it out in your marriage. Honor her and expect your children to honor her. Dads, if your children disrespect their mother, they should only do so being ready to meet Jesus. If you guys could bring the projection mode, we're going to show a video. As you bring it to projection mode, have any of you heard of the Shut Up Challenge? Yeah, it's on TikTok, and my view of it is can anything good come from TikTok? But anyway, there's a shut up challenge, and it was basically mom and kids seeing how a father would react when hearing one of the kids tell their own mother to shut up. Now, I wouldn't recommend repeating this, by the way. But here's one that I found interesting, and see if you see what I see. Okay.
Hey, Bunny, could you go take out the trash, please?
Shut up, Mom. Dad, we're just joking. It's just a prank. It's just a prank.
A joke. It's a...
Okay. This young man is having a come to Jesus moment. And I didn't know Jesus wore camouflage, but listen, this man loves his wife, and I don't know his story, but his children know that. Even in the context of a joke, they knew that mother is a word that we honor and that we take seriously. And if you're a husband, you should do that. Okay, we can bring the lights back up. Children, you should always honor your mother. Ephesians 6 says this, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise. Children, you should always speak with respect. Gary Brown will tell our youth group, what's the question that Gary most often asks when you're around your mother? Have you hugged your mother? You should always answer her every request with a smile and a yes, Mom. You should make her life easier. Think how hard you've made her life. Do what you can to make her life a little bit better. Your mother, and this applies to all of us, not just teenager, your mother carried you for 9 months, roughly. And through great pain, she brought you into the world. That's part of the curse. And so when you grow up, even after you grow up, remember to love and honor your mother. You should call your mother, because someday you won't be able to. And lastly, to everyone else, may we celebrate and support family. We should bless families. That's what kingdom is all about. That's why we go to weddings for people we may not really know that well, but we should still go to the wedding when you see an announcement or get invited. You should go to a baby shower, even if you don't know them that well, because somebody went to your baby shower and honored you and honored your new child. You should sign up to bring a meal to a new mom, to a new dad, because life is hard in those early days. And by the early days, we mean age 0 to 18. You should offer to help with the kids. I love some of the women in here. In fact, just one Sunday night, we had a lady in here. She was a guest, and she had a couple of young children. And here came Jamie Womack to help. Now, nobody asked Jamie to do that, but that's the kind of people kingdom people are. Do we get that? You should sign up to be a prayer pal when you have the opportunity. You should help in a spiritual way. If you're a seasoned mom, I want to encourage you to be a Titus 2 mentor, to pay it backwards. Now, this is kind of interesting in the Titus 2 ministry, which is older women being mentors to younger women. You know who we have more of? We have more younger women who are wanting mentors. You know who they are in desperate need of? Older, seasoned, mature Christian women, not perfect, but people who'd be willing voices and hearts to speak into the lives of young women in regards to marriage and family and so forth. That's a scriptural thing to do. You can offer a perspective that no one else can, including the preacher. You can offer plenty of mercy and grace and Christ-centered wisdom. And if you want to do that, you should talk to Paulette Ware or Jennifer Melendi and be a mentor. And that's a good way to celebrate and support family. One final illustration. In 2014, about 10 years ago, Kevin Durant who then played for the Oklahoma City Thunder, he delivered a very emotional speech. He was receiving the the NBA MVP award. And in receiving that award, he gave credit to his greatest hero in the world.
One of the best memories I had is when we moved into our first apartment. No bed, no furniture, and we just all sat in the living room and just hugged each other. Because that's what we thought we made it. And when something good happens to you, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to look back to what brought me here. And you wake me up in the middle of the night in the summer times, making me run up a hill, making me do push-ups, screaming at me from the sideline of my games at 8 or 9 years old. We wasn't supposed to be here. You made us believe. You kept us off the street, put clothes on our backs, food on the table. When you didn't eat, you made sure we ate. You went to sleep hungry. You sacrificed for us. You the real MVP.
I echo Kevin's sentiment. Your mother is the real MVP. She helped to make you. She values you like no one else. She provides for you. May we honor our mothers today and every day. And when you think about it, your mother gave of herself to make sure that you were born. And in a similar way, Jesus laid down himself to make sure that you could be born again. This morning, I can really think of no better segue as we talk about mothers and what they do for us than to point our eyes back to Jesus and to remember what he did for us. If you're ready to walk with him, if you're ready to journey with him, to become a part of the kingdom and to be a part of Jesus' mission, there would be no greater opportunity than this morning to put Christ on in baptism. If you're ready to become a Christian, you can meet me down front, and we'll be glad to help you do that. If you have another spiritual need, prayers of the shepherds of this congregation, we'd be delighted to help you with that. And for that, you can go to the back and meet with our shepherds. They'll pray with you and pray for you. We know that we're here today, and part of that is honoring our mothers. But more than that, it's important that we all honor the Lord. If this morning you've been living in a way and you haven't been honoring the Lord, and you'd like for us to help you with that in some way, head to the back. Whatever your need might be, now is the time to respond as together we stand and sing.
If the skies above you are gray